Hey everyone, just wanted to give a quick little rundown before we watch Kenny's interview. So Kenny and his family settled in Beltrami Island State Forest area prior to it being Beltrami Island State Forest. In the early 1900s, it looked very different than what it does today. A lot of the timber was cut down and sold by different logging companies in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So it was opened up for settlement for farmers. And an influx of people moved and settled in the area. But it wasn't found out until after they moved that the soil was extremely poor quality. It was very difficult to raise a crop. And farmers who can't raise a crop tend to not make a lot of money. This meant that a large amount of farmers in the Beltrami Island area were tax delinquent. By the 1930s and the Great Depression, the federal government decided to step in and relocate these families out of this poor soil area onto better soil so that they could have a chance. And Kenny Cole and his family were one of the families that was relocated. You'll be able to hear his perspective on it, but on the records, especially around northwestern Minnesota, is that a lot of the families felt really pressured to move out of there and were forced out of it, though looking at the Beltrami Island project from the state and government side, it was seen as a very successful project in aiding hundreds of people to have a more successful life. I hope you enjoy Kenny's interview.
This is Warroad History interview number 4. Today is Friday, March 7th, 2025. I'm Ron Tweet with Brady Swanson at the Warroad Heritage Center, and today we're visiting with a very special guest. His name is Kenny Cole, and we're proud to say that he is 97 years young. Ken was part of a family that originally settled in what is now the Beltrami Island State Forest and was then moved by the federal government as part of the Beltrami Island Resettlement Project. We look forward to his stories and recollections of that era in time. So welcome, Ken.
Yeah.
Nice to have you. So let's begin by talking about, I know you've told me that your grandfather was the first to move into the forest and settle there. What was his name and what year would that have been?
George Coleman was in 1910.
Okay. And so he was there for a substantial amount of time. What can you tell us about his family? Did he have a large family or?
There was 12 of them in the family, 6 boys and 6 girls. And he died at a young age at 62 years old in 1922. He evidently come down with pneumonia and went into Roseau. When they got to Roseau, everything was closed, so he went into a hotel. And the next morning, he went to the doctor's office, but they put him in the hospital, but he died that day.
Huh. How would he have, at that time in 1910, was that, did they have vehicles then? He was...
No, I think he went by horse and buggy.
Okay, that's what I would
The
suspect.
roads weren't, they didn't have roads suitable for automobiles.
Okay.
Not that many of them anyway.
Right. Okay, let's move on then and talk about your father and his family. Okay, so I assume they were born in the forest as well, your dad and all of his siblings?
All of them but one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One was born after we resettled.
Okay. So why don't you identify your dad and all of your siblings, so your dad and mother and your siblings.
Okay, my dad, John Cole, was born in 1900, and my mother was an immigrant from Germany, and they came over. I don't really know the date, but it would have been just before World War One. And they settled. They first came into Canada, and then migrated down to into North Dakota, and eventually ended up in the Beltrami Forest, where I don't know if he homesteaded or bought a place there, but they lived there until a resettlement.
Okay. How about your siblings? How many were in that family? How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Okay, we had, there was 4 boys and 1 girl, 5 of us.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. And how do you rank in the order?
I'm the oldest.
You're
yeah.
the oldest.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's,
right.
we're all living except one. I have a brother that's passed.
Okay. Great. All right. Let's move on and talk about, do you know anything about the move into the forest? You know, why did they end up choosing the forest? Why they came here, where they came from?
They came from all, the people there came from all over. We had Scandinavian people, German people, and I think the area was opened up to homesteading, and that was the reason for the like
Yeah.
almost every section in that township was settled at one time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Do you remember your parents talking and grandparents talking about road conditions and travel and so on out in the forest? Were they building roads at that time, or?
I remember, I suppose I was only like maybe 3-4 years old. I remember building the road that ran from what we call now Axelson's Corner to Winter, and they built it with slipscapers and horses.
Okay. What is a slipscaper?
It's a tumblebug scraper that has two handles on it, and it's pulled until it's filled, and then when they get to where they want to go, they just flip it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a long process, building a road with
Yeah.
that. Long process. Okay.
A little better than shovels.
A little bit, that's right. Horses could do a good portion
Yeah.
of the work. Okay. So you were born in the forest?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, your whole family. Just, I assume it was back then. Was there a midwife, or?
My grandmother was a midwife, yeah.
Your grandmother?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's kind of special.
Grandmother Cole.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about where was the homestead located, where your parents lived. Can you describe that, where it was?
If you go down the Penturn Road, what they call the Penturn Road, if you go far enough, you'll come to the river. And they lived about a half a mile, from a quarter to half a mile south of the Rosa River on the south side.
Okay.
And when we were there, the Penturn post office was in more than one place there, but when we were down there, it was at Brenningham's had the post office, and that would have been about a mile north of where we lived.
Okay. Now, was there a substantial bridge across the river there?
We had a fairly good bridge, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, we know where the Penturn Church is. When you speak of Penturn, the community, is that where the church is today, or was it?
The church is about, well, maybe a half a mile east of there, of the post office, and maybe a little bit south.
Okay.
Yeah, as the crow flies.
Okay. What else was there where was it just the post office or was there a small store or?
No, it was just the post office. They sold candy bars and stuff because I remember my parents would give me and my brother enough money to buy a candy bar if we'd go get the mail.
Do you recall how much that candy bar cost?
I think it was maybe around a penny.
Oh, that's pretty special.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, let's talk about. I wanted to go back to the mail. When you talk about the post office there, where did mail come from? Did it come out of Warroad or out of Roseau, or do you know?
You know, I'm not sure. I kind of think it come out of Warroad.
Okay. And was that everyday delivery?
I think it was about 3 times a week.
3 times.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
It wasn't delivered to mailboxes. It was delivered to the post office, and then everybody had to come and pick up their own mail.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So let's talk about the homestead where you grew up. Okay. Can you describe it for us? First of all, how much land did you have, or did your dad have there?
I think he had 160.
Okay, so a full quarter section.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was long. It was not in a section. It was strung out. 80, I think, an 80 and a 40 or 240s. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Talk about the homestead, the buildings that were there, and so on. What you remember?
Well, Dad had logged. He had homesteaded a 40 on what they call south of North Camp, where they had a lot of white pine and Norway pine on it. He'd logged that off and had the lumber sawed and built the house and the barn. I suppose the house was built in about I think about 1929, and the barn was built shortly after that. And where the house was situated was in a jack pine grove. Actually, that's what I missed most about leaving that place was the wind whistling through the pines. I as a kid, we played under those pines when we got back, when we moved out of the forest. I was lonesome for the whistling of the wind in the pines.
Huh. Interesting. Yep. So barn, house,
Sheep shed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and a small granary.
Okay.
That was about the size of the building.
Yeah. So, did you raise any crop out there at all?
Dad would put in about maybe 10 acres of oats is about all he raised.
I presume for
and
cattle
the
feed.
rest was hay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he did have had a fairly large flock of sheep and a number of cattle. I think we milked probably 8-10 cows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
I remember my dad, in the fall, he would go out in the Dakotas with a team of horses and bundle wagon, and they'd work the fall harvest out there, and on the way then on home, he'd come with a load of grain for the stock. Yeah.
that's a long trip
haul,
with a team of horses out to the. Yeah.
It's long enough with a car. I don't know how they did it with horses.
It is. Yeah. Okay. So you talked a little bit about livestock. So you had some sheep, you said,
Yeah.
and some milk cows, beef cows at all,
Yeah,
or
yeah, they had. He always had maybe a dozen young stock, and then at least 5, 6, 7, 8 horses. Yeah.
Okay.
He was a horseman. He would buy broncos that were, what do you call them, broncos? They were range horses that were shipped into Warroad and sold, and they were unbroke. They weren't even broke to the halter, and he'd bring them home and work with them till they got them so they would be a good workhorse. And
Okay.
he had a knack with horses. He could train them.
People say the Cole boys are horse people, so.
Yeah.
So would those horses be shipped in here on the railroad or?
I think they were shipped by rail. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then would he break them as saddle horses or?
The harness horses.
Harness
Yeah,
horses.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that would make sense. Pigs and chickens, I'm sure.
Had pigs, chickens. And,
Yeah.
yeah, that's about it. Yeah, they never had geese or. My grandmother had geese, and I hated them because they'd chase me when we come over there. Yeah.
In other words, I guess you could probably say the farmyard was your deep freeze, so to speak. I'm sure,
That's right. Yeah.
that was your food source,
Yeah.
So
we always had
subsistence farming. Yeah.
Where did they sell the milk?
the milk wasn't sold. It was we would scrim at that time they didn't even have a separator, but we'd give them the cream off of it and put that in a cream can, a small can like that, would usually smaller than that. And then once a week, Barclay Branningham, the fellow that had the post office, he had a truck too. He'd make the trip to Warroad with the cream, and Warroad at that time had a creamery. So, and he'd pick up the cream all the way along the road into Warroad.
Okay. I'm guessing your mom probably made butter as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not only my mother, it was us
Oh,
kids that
the kids who did it.
cranked
Yeah.
the churn. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Fun. Okay. So your father and mom were not really, it was mostly subsistence. They were surviving out there. They're not doing something out there to really make money.
No.
It was
Just
existing.
Existing.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's talk about power out there. You didn't have any electricity, was there?
No.
There.
No.
Okay.
Branningham had rigged up so he had electric lights with a generator and
Okay.
windmill. Yeah.
Yeah. I would guess most everyone was wood for heat and
Yep.
And
Definitely. Yeah.
lamps, kerosene lamps, and
Yep.
for light and so on. Okay. How about you attending school out there? Did you attend school out there in the forest?
I went through the third grade out there, and we walked through the woods about a mile had to cross the river. Dad had built a walking bridge across the river so we could walk across the river, because we didn't. If we went down where the bridge was, it would have been a half a mile farther. So we took a cut across through the woods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember your teacher's name?
One of them, Ethel Thamala. Yeah.
Okay.
I remember her. I don't really remember any other than that, I guess.
Okay. So you attended grades 1, 2, and 3 out there.
Yeah.
And where was that school at? Was that at Pentern?
No, it
Winter?
it was about a half a mile south and a half a mile west of where Pentern's post office was.
Okay.
Yeah, just right next to where my grandfather's land was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And do you know whatever happened to that school?
Yeah, it was moved up, and I finished my 8th grade, up to the 8th grade in that same schoolhouse.
Oh, really?
Yeah. we moved up to where we lived in the American Township called Pleasant Valley. U18 was,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. How about life out in the forest? Church, visiting neighbors. Did you do much of that? Or?
Yeah, there was a lot more visiting then than there is nowadays. You definitely knew your next door neighbor, which you don't now. And I can still remember going visiting with the horses in the sled in the wintertime. My mother would heat up the flat irons and put under the quilts, and we'd sit under the quilts, and down the road we'd go. And I can still hear the squeaking under the runners of the sled, and smell the horses, of course. And we'd go and probably visit or play cards, or they'd have a dance, a party. Have all a bunch of neighbors get there. They just move the furniture out of the biggest room in the house, and they'd have a dance.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard stories about that in years past, about having a dance at the schoolhouse, and they'd dance all night, and then when early morning came, they cleared everything out of the way and then held church service.
Yeah,
So
that was done, that's for sure.
Good.